Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're taking a tour of the Hill and Dale Estates in LaGrange, Georgia with my Master Gardener group, and I wanted to share it with you. The first place we got to was the kennel. This kennel housed horses, dogs, and cats, and I must say that those horses, dogs, and cats lived in the lap of luxury. Around the property, they have a lot of old crepe myrtles, and it is planted very much in a cottage garden style in some areas, as well as a very structured gardens with lots of boxwoods. As we went around taking the tour, the horticulturist who gave us the tour pointed out unique plants like this bear's breeches that's grown primarily for the foliage. In this path right here, we had an overwhelming rose smell, and everyone was trying to figure it out, and then we found out what the culprit was. It was a rose down in between these plantings that we deduced was some type of damask rose. They also had a lot of beautiful foliage, as well as a lot of irises grown almost as ground cover in certain areas. After leaving this walkway, we came to what they consider their holding garden. And their holding garden is exactly what it sounds like. Each season, they swap out the many pots around the property, and they pull certain plants out of certain plantings, and they store them in this location here until they're ready to use those plants again. Things like boxwoods, evergreens, grasses, heucheras, and things like that. So in the current holding station are the above mentioned plants because they pull them out of their winter plantings and upgraded for the spring. Everything around the estate has been kept as original as possible. There were only 3 families who ever owned this home. The Fuller family and the Calloway family was the last family to own it. The Calloway family, matter of fact, still operates the family foundation and conducts business out of one of the buildings on the property. That is a beautiful caramel heuchera in the holding station. Now, in this station, it is also a holding station. It has mint original to Mrs. Calloway from the 1800s, as well as some begonias and some hardy begonias and some other plants such as baptisia and so forth that were pulled out of certain plantings. They are reworking much of the gardens at the moment, and so they bring a lot of plants here in order to preserve them until they're ready to put them back or put them in a new planting. Excuse my voice. I'm dealing with allergies and a little bit of a sore throat, so sounding a little rough, but I promise you, if you endure, you will enjoy this tour. One of the things that they also have is a cutting garden in the works that has different roses, peonies, and other things. This particular rose, no one knew the name. It just blooms profusely. The cutting garden is managed by another horticulturist. I think they have a total of 9 on staff to manage these acres of property. The cutting garden is used to make arrangements for the house, the actual estate itself, which is run as a museum and a meeting venue and so forth in the LaGrange area. After leaving the cutting garden, we went to Iris Alley. Y'all, there's about 3,000 plus square feet of just irises, and these are all old irises in various colors, from mauves to pinks to lavenders. There's even a peach colored one, and these were all collected. They also have the Japanese roof irises that you see here. And they were just beautiful, but we came towards the tail end of iris season. We were told that in the fall they plan to do grab bags of these irises. So if you're in the LaGrange area or want to even make arrangements to get one of these bags so you can have a bit of American history in your garden, they're going to be just pulling out some, thinning the irises because it's that time, and making these available for people in their local area to be able to be planted. This mauve and pink one right here was so absolutely stunning to me. That, she was like, you can come volunteer. We like to share plants with our volunteers. And I'm seriously contemplating it just so I can get some unique plants for my garden. It'll also help me to fulfill some of my master gardener volunteer hours. So who knows? As if I don't have enough in my day to do, right? After we left the tulips, we went over to the kitchen garden. And the kitchen garden, they grow one for demonstration to the public of how a kitchen garden was done during that time period, but also to provide food for staff that works there, and they donate most of it to the local food bank. They grow everything from herbs, cottage flowers, brassicas, so your veggies, and they had broccoli and cauliflower, cabbage and greens, and we're getting ready to switch over to their summer garden while we were there. So they had just planted some tomato plants, and they were getting ready to add to it some more vegetable crops like cucumbers and squash and so forth. Now, what I will say is that they did have a flower border around the veggie garden that had delphiniums and more irises and everything that was grown and some foxgloves, and they were all grown because they self-seeded. So they just allow it to go to seed each season, and it returns each year looking ever so beautiful. The greens looked stunning for this time of year, and I meant by this time of year because typically by now they're going to seed and they're full of holes because of the cabbage moths. At the back of the the vegetable garden, they had more peonies that they use as part of the floral arrangements for the estate. And they were absolutely beautiful. They looked like a lot of Sarah Bernhardt and Festiva Maximus. And along the fence for the garden was the New Dawn Rose, and it runs over the trellis as well as along the fence. Around the property, you will find these massive crepe myrtles that are not pruned, so they just grow into big trees, and they're just very stately. The purple irises that you're seeing and will continue to see have a lot of fragrance. They smell like grape jelly, actually, and that's one of the features of why they grow so well on the property. Once we left this area, we went to one of the Boxwood gardens. This one was off limits because it has boxwood blight, and they were not allowing the crowds to go amongst that. But it has only white flowers with boxwood plantings and different planting areas with different themes. They had one that was called the chapel and the offering and things like that, and just very pretty and ethereal. However, we couldn't access it because, like I said, they were fighting boxwood blight. I was told that they have over 4 acres of terraces that included boxwoods. They have no count as to how many official boxwoods they have, but that ought to give you an idea. They are trialing some new varieties of boxwoods that are more resistant to boxwood blight, and seeing if they would need to swap over some of their plantings. That's the house off to the left These are just the grounds. We did not take a tour of the inside, just the gardens. Behind this particular bed is what they call the hothouse or the greenhouse. In this particular garden, they have some of the oldest species of magnolias and other trees that are to this area. This family was very wealthy, so they could afford to bring in special species and new varieties of trees. I fell in love with this variegated boxwood and decided I needed a couple in my own personal garden. Leaving that area, we went into the greenhouse where we learned that the lady of the house loved orchids as well as canna lilies. So calla lilies, so she collected them and grew them year round in her greenhouse. She also collected begonias and had areas where the gardeners would propagate and grow these throughout the season. My camera overheated in here, so I didn't get to give you all the full treatment of the greenhouse. Once we left here, we went outside to the herb garden, and because my camera was overheated, I could not take footage. But y'all, I literally gasped out loud and just simply said, wow. It was breathtaking. It was pretty much a planting with herbs, excuse me, with herbs, vegetables, as well as flowers. But it was done in such a way that it was absolutely stunning. And some of the herbs were going to seed. So it was really, really pretty. This is a back view of the estate, and you're only seeing a portion of the house from this side. Another one of the terrace gardens, you climb up a lot of these limestone steps to go to the different levels of the gardens as we were going. So they're redoing certain garden areas. One of them is going to be made into a Florida garden, more of a tropical area. This is where the husband and wife of this property would go and have their dates. So that garden is considered to be very special. Again, loads of boxwoods all around the place. And then the plantings, the main focus for this here has been snapdragons as well as foxgloves. There is a rumor that one of the family member got lost in the maze, because there's a maze garden. And so they whacked all the boxwoods back halfway so that no one would ever get lost in there again. So it was interesting to still see it. It didn't make as much of an impact because they're not as tall as they used to be. It was a very hot day, but it was made cooler by all the trees around the property. Around the property also, they had a lot of areas where the boxwoods were planted in such a way to spell out certain words. And one of the areas we're going to get to soon has the word God spelled out, because these people were very religious and they went to church, and they helped to build one of the biggest churches in LaGrange, and the families are still members of that church. So goes to show their faith was a big component of their lives, and they built that in to their gardens. More foxgloves as well as boxwoods. This is the garden where God is spelled out here. And we were able to see it better from the above terrace. But it's just amazing to me how densely planted they are in order to get, there it is. It's planted so that you can get the look that you're going for. It was bordered by a tea hedge. And then we got to this cottage garden planting as we were taking one of the trails up to the main entrance or the main gardens behind the house. More foxgloves. It had some Japanese painted ferns, some columbine, just different plants to give you that cottage look. So then we get to this garden up here where boxwoods died, and one spells mother, one spells father, but you can't really see that because the boxwoods need to grow up a bit more so that you can actually see what is spelled out there. More of the snapdragons. And this is the back to the house. And then outside of those doors is this fountain, the main fountain for this area. In the summertime, they have it with a different set of plantings, mostly caladiums. In the spring, it is surrounded by white azaleas, and then they had the snapdragons and foxgloves out there. So very, very pretty planting. It was so soothing to listen to the water as we were standing there. And she was telling us how they go about switching plants around from place to place. Once we left this area, we went to another planting that had more roses. And this horticulturist has been there only a year, so she's still trying to learn some of the plants and what's where. She walks around with a binder, and then as she identifies a new species or something, she jots it down so that they can have a thorough record of all the plantings on the property. She gave us a great tour, y'all, and is very knowledgeable. I would have gotten lost a million times in this place because there's so many little gardens and each garden has a theme. And I forgot what this one spells out, but there is another thing. This family was very big on sayings and words in boxwoods. So this was another one of those. Once we left this area, we were all getting a bit hot. So we took some stairs and went over to where the pool used to be to get a drink of water and to also see another area of the garden. On our way there, we encountered a plant that actually smelled like bananas. It's a type of magnolia, and the blooms are really tiny, but it smells almost like Laffy Taffy, or what's that candy that we ate as kids that was banana flavored, but just like that is what the thing smells like. So we left here, went over to what used to be the pool area and came across their cold frames. Y'all, if I could replicate this, I would. It is terracotta tiles on the walls and on the floor, and then they plant in there and overwintered their tropicals in there. At the back, you will see those are window, so it's glass panes that fit into those slots. And then they cover that over, and then they are able to overwinter their crops. There is the one of the other buildings on the property, and after we leave here, we go and we visit what's known as the Ray Garden. This is the pool house here. This is the Ray Garden, named so because it has a gazebo, a metal gazebo in the middle, and all the garden beds come out as rays of the sun, and they have different plantings. They have daylilies, they have annuals, and they use it more as an annual garden to have an annual that they focus on each and every year. And then it is surrounded by different evergreens and hedges. Very, very beautiful when it's all in bloom. I think they are also planning to thin those daylilies, which are heirloom varieties. So they're going to make those available to the public also once they thin those this year. So, so pretty. Here we are back again on the side of the house. There's the pool house. Again, they were prepping for a wedding while we were there because apparently they hold weddings at this estate. It's one of the ways they generate revenue. And I saw one of the prettiest espalier jobs ever. These are southern magnolia trees espaliered on the side of that building. Very, very pretty. It is said that Mrs. Calloway used to keep her grandkids and she would make hot dogs in the little kitchen to the right there at the pool, and they would have a great time with Granny. Thank you so much for joining me for this tour of the Hillendale Estates in LaGrange. If you've enjoyed my content, please consider subscribing. Until next time, happy gardening, y'all.